Because before I thought that the flow state is not something you could harness. It just comes once in a while, right? Like
Okay.
you could be doing the activity or the task and you're unable to harness the sense or the flow state, the flow just sometimes just comes to you. But since we decided to do this pod, I really started thinking about it personally. And I was like, yo, wait a second. This shit can be harnessed, dude. I think it's possible. And I think that you can pass it on to others as well in group settings if you are open to it. There's a barrier though. And the barrier is sometimes a confidence thing, or it could be a envy thing. Because let's just use the basketball game, for example. If you're playing on the same team with somebody and someone's doing good, and you have the barrier of like, yo, they're doing good, like I can't, or they're doing good, like why can't I be doing good? Or so, along those lines, it can prevent you from getting to the flow state. But if you really let your heart be like, yo, wow, like, yo, he's playing so fucking good, it can also make you get into the flow state too and start ripping shit. I believe that.
Yeah. So I agree with you. And it is definitely to do with comparable skill levels, right? Like if you are participating with a group of people who are vastly better skilled at whatever it is activity you're doing, it might be hard to get into the flow state. If you're on a similar level to them, it might be it's probably going to be easier to get into that flow state. But I don't think it's exclusive. Like I think that there are times when you can have someone who isn't at the same skill level as everybody else who could also get into a flow state, right? But I think that it does help if you are at similar skill levels. I have an example of this with motorbike riding. So some of my mates that I ride with, one in particular, him and I are able to get into that flow state and sort of, we can ride almost side by side on very tight trails. And we know exactly what the other person is doing and going to be doing. And we're at the limit of our, almost at the limit of our abilities, but we don't have to ever think or worry that they're going to do something dangerous or crazy or crash into us or anything else. Like we are in unison, so to speak. And we're not talking, we're not looking at each, we're not doing anything. It's just, right? And you're not even thinking about it. And that is a beautiful thing. And that's one of my favorite things about enduro and adventure riding is that you can go and do this for hours on end at a time. And it just it's a beautiful experience. But yeah, you can share it and you can help others to get into that flow state. I think you have to have a level of confidence too and an ability.
I've had that with my brother skiing actually, because he grew up skiing as well. So we did a lot of skiing together and side by side, just tearing it up. And you're right. There's this higher state of consciousness where we become sort of connected. It's so insane, but it's real. Like you've experienced it motorbiking. I've experienced it skiing. And I guess we're sharing this sort of higher state of flow consciousness.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an entanglement, right? Like you are entangled with that other person. So everything that they do has an effect on you and everything you do has an effect on them without even really knowing it, right? It's that spooky action at a distance kind of thing, quantum mechanics kind of stuff. But you are entangled for that moment and you're sort of functioning as one does one. It directly affects what the other does and you just work in unison. But you have to get into that flow state to be able to be that entangled. And I think that's what the flow state is. It's an intertwinement or an entanglement with the task at hand that you're doing. And it is with that other person. It is but yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I agree with you. You can cultivate flow states. You can harness that flow state. You can specifically curate, and you can take the work that Mihai Csikszentmihalyi has done to understand what sort of boxes need to be ticked to get into this flow state. And I think one of them, and you mentioned this with your study, is that and I mentioned this with the gym and motorbike riding, you have to have the right environment. You have to be in the right environment. It's very, very hard to get flow state if you don't have the right environment. For me with study and for learning, a big thing is headphones, just putting them on, not having anything play, but just cutting out the the sensory input from my environment, like the auditory sensory input from my environment, really helps me to get in that mindset or that environment to get into a flow state for studying.